Drew here, and that was something. I really enjoyed this season. I know I can get bogged down in negativity, and that can drive some of you nuts, but it is called film criticism. So, but the thing is, I really enjoyed this episode, but it wasn't the knockout punch that I had kind of hoped for. I kind of knew that they weren't gonna end it in a super satisfying way, that they were gonna leave the door open for stories next season. And there's a lot of questions. I think that the thing with this episode is it did just kind of cap off a very good second season. This season didn't really, level up significantly, I feel, but it deserves credit for at least managing to match, I think, the quality of the first season. That's not something that every show can do, so I give it credit for that. I think the closest thing to a knockout blow this episode, to a mic drop, was the revelation that Marcus seems to have been turned somehow into a necromancer. And I think that there's, a couple different explanations. We're probably going to get more insight into this if they make a third season. But the thing is, I think that in all likelihood, the fruit probably played a role in this. And the reason I say that is because if they didn't have that come back in a significant way, then why have it happen? Why have all the characters ingest the dark photon energy in the form of the fruit if it wasn't going to have some kind of a payoff? So to me, I'm extremely suspicious that had something to do with it, at least that it was a factor. Clearly, I think the fact that he had the relic on his head, that also probably played a factor, that maybe perhaps it was a combination of these two things, and the nano technology was ingested by him as well, and that led to him becoming a necromancer. I guess the third option, and probably the more obvious one to most people, is that he was nailed to the tree. So you wonder how that played into things. That he was nailed to this tree that grew up out of Seven's body after Seven was killed. So as a turn for the character, I think this is a good direction for them to go, because I feel like they've not always known what to do with Marcus in this show. Some of you complained about me saying that I didn't think that he would turn on Soul so quickly last episode, and you pointed out, well, his wife just got turned into a tree, and I get it. Like, that would definitely be enough to make someone change from having faith in Soul to thinking that Soul is evil. But generally speaking, when I see people walk away from their faith or come to hate God, I think that there is this period of denial and grappling, and there's a lot more rationalization and dialogue within oneself and with other people that goes on. And we just kind of saw it flip like a switch with Marcus. He was all in on following Soul, and now he's all in on opposing Soul.
After what it did to Sue, I would never listen to it again.
You're not as strong as you think.
None of us are, Robot.
And it's funny because it seems like he's now ended up changed perhaps into an agent of Soul. It seems that Soul probably orchestrated all these events so that Marcus would get turned into this necromancer.
I heard a voice, told me where to find you, and what I needed to do to punish you.
And it's going to be really intriguing and interesting to see what they do with this. I think definitely there's a lot of imagery here that brings to mind the fact that the necromancers are kind of saviors, the saviors of humanity. And you wonder if they, over the course of this series, as it continues, if it continues, are going to become deities in their own right, at least in the minds of the people that they are saving.
Our savior. Lamia, the serpent killer. Lamia, the god.
This obviously segued into grandmother's speech about, play games, don't create gods to worship. Even atheists will create gods.
When overcome with fear, even atheists will make up gods to pray to, I assure you. those prayers will go unanswered. Play the game. That's how you survive.
But you also see this with Marcus, the fact that he got crucified to a tree upside down, and then at the end of the episode, the way that he's hanging and hovering in the air there, it's kind of a resurrection in a way. So it's very much, kind of subverting the idea of the Christ story from the Bible. So I'm really interested to see where they take this stuff. The other big moment this episode, but this one I don't think registered as strongly, perhaps because it was a little bit more obvious that it was going to happen, was the betrayal of Mother by Grandmother. A lot of you had predicted that Grandmother was lying, and I have to be honest and say that at the time when she was talking to Mother, it didn't occur to me that she would be lying, because she just seems so matter-of-fact and very, very, logical and not really to be holding anything back. And I don't think she actually was lying, but she actually did help Mother to take out Seven. So she actually did help her accomplish that objective. I think that her dark agenda was just something that was going on in the back of her head. Maybe not even something that she had in mind yet, but over the course of this episode, I think she came to this conclusion, obviously, that she wants to turn the humans into devolved humans. This kind of gets into the debate that, I guess not really a debate, I'm not really here to argue about it, but like the discussion / opinions being expressed in the comments about the fact that, the devolved humans, essentially they deserve the same respect and the same treatment as the human humans. But it's interesting because it's really hard to argue, why wouldn't you want these humans to become devolved humans from the android's perspective, unless you view humanity as somehow better than being devolved, and as being a human as being something special and worthy of protection. Otherwise, like if your odds of survival are better, why wouldn't you want to be turned into a devolved human?
And they are still human beings. A simpler, happier version of themselves.
No, it's not right.
It equates.
But it is not right!
So the fact that Mother is on one side of the debate and Grandmother is on the other, it kind of makes it seem to me that Mother values humanity, that over the course of the story, as she's grown closer to humans, that she has come to believe that being an emotional creature, being a moral creature, that it has benefits. For all, the complexity that we see at the animal kingdom, something I don't really think we see is morality as such. We don't see animals making decisions based on, it would be wrong for me to do this. We just see animals acting according to instinct. So I think that is something worth preserving, and I'm on Mother's side in this one. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. I won't necessarily disagree with you, but I would love to hear what you think. This episode, we see Mother take on her child, take on Seven. I had kind of thought that it would be Grandmother versus Seven, but again, it makes more sense from this perspective that it's Mother being forced to deal with this creature that she has emotions for, or had emotions for. It feels like a little bit of an odd choice having her put on this veil to face Seven, because we don't get to see her emotional acting. We don't get to see Amanda Collin giving the great performance that she's given so far this season, because her face is covered. And we don't get to see her grappling with it as much, because it seems like it kind of takes away her protective urges for this creature. They do some clever things visually here, having it try to latch on to feed to her again. The fact that, it's that motherly connection, breastfeeding, one of the moments where a child is just utterly dependent on the mother, and then the mother, in this case, not, being there to kill it. And I think that the showrunners have done a good job of making Seven a rather sympathetic entity. Like, I always never really wanted to see it die. I was hoping that it could be redeemed in some way / kind of help the main characters, but of course that wasn't in the cards. So I think that they did a really good job realizing this creature, both visually and also from a writing standpoint. Of course, it was a little silly critic again, that they had such a hard time killing Campion. Like, I feel like Seven could have killed Campion like immediately if it was just acting out with its full powers in a realistic manner as it had been portrayed as being able to do. But nonetheless, I thought that, you know, the way that this played out was all very interesting. I should mention, I've seen other people point this out, so it's not just me. I really feel like you get really, really strong Alien Covenant vibes. There's a scene in Alien Covenant, and I'm not going to spoil what happens for those of you who haven't seen that movie, but the scene with David at the end here, the moment when grandmother shuts Mother up in that pod and, you know, kind of has her in the digital temple, her consciousness trapped there, it really reminded me of a sequence in Alien Covenant, just the horror of being trapped and impotent and unable to protect her children. It was really well executed, and it, like I said, a pretty good cliffhanger. I mean, it leaves the story a lot of potential directions to go. Some of you have theorized that Sol is in the planet's core, and increasingly, I mean, this episode all but seems to confirm that. And it's annoying that, you know, Marcus was on his way down to check it out when he was stopped. And you wonder what he would have found if he had been able to continue. So we're going to have to wait a little while longer for anybody to make it down to the core. Some of you, you know, are really enjoying this show and really just admiring the craft and the intriguing philosophical aspects. Some of you are frustrated that they're not revealing the answers to their mysteries more quickly. For my part, I understand that perspective of not wanting the mysteries, of wanting the mysteries to be revealed more quickly, but I have to say, I feel that when I know that writers have answers, like I feel like if I had a discussion with these writers that they would be able to tell me what's going on. I'm willing to be patient and to let things go at the writer's pace. So far I haven't found this show too frustrating because I feel like they've really teased out a lot of clues. I think that when we view this series in hindsight, assuming that they get to finish it, I think everything will make sense, and I appreciate the consistency of the writing that they're able to accomplish that. Lastly, I really have enjoyed the relationship between Paul and Campion, these two children that had such different backgrounds. And it's a little bit of a Todd and Copper situation. I'm not entirely sure where they're going to end up, how they're going to end up at the end of the day, whether they'll still be friends. But I really have enjoyed this relationship, the portrayals by the two young actors who are very, very charming. I think that the moment where they talked about Vril and Sue, that they're both gone, I think that was kind of shutting the page, shutting the book on this chapter of the story. And I'm glad that they kind of gave confirmation of that. I think that's what they're doing. I mean, there's always a possibility Sue could return to the story in some form. I mean, I won't rule it out entirely. And the same could be said for Vril. But I really do feel like that felt like a fitting conclusion to their story. Just these two young boys having to reconcile themselves to loss, which is part of coming of age. So overall, like I said, I don't think this was like a knockout punch of a final episode, but it was a solid conclusion to a very, very solid season. And I hate cliffhangers, but these didn't bother me unduly because they do, you know, at the end of the day, we kind of finished a chapter of a story. We finished Seven's story, his impact on this season, you know, started at the end of last season and kind of came to a conclusion in this episode. I felt like there was enough completeness here, enough teasing of possibilities that I'm excited to come back for a third season. That's usually the test of whether a show did a good job, whether or not I would come back for a third season. And I would, because I have pretty good faith in these writers and in the production team that if they did a third season, it would live up to this season and the first season. So those are my thoughts for what they are worth. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of other shows, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, thanks so much for watching.